Hello, guys. Welcome to The Breakdown. Another new episode with Tanya and Johanna. So, Johanna, you were really, really excited for this episode, like ecstatic.
Really excited. Look at the fairy house is out. My fairy crystals are out, and I meditated before we got on, and I have a little girl elemental who hangs out every now and then, and she came by, and all she said was, "Are you ready?" I said, "Okay, I'm ready."
So for those of you who are joining us, if you haven't figured it out with the fairy house behind Johanna and her talking about how she's got elementals with her, we are breaking down fairies, dragons, and elementals today. All right. And, just a reminder out here, guys, that this show is to expand your mind, open your mind. Okay. So the opinions of our guests are not ours. The opinions of what we give is not always, whatever Johanna believes is not necessarily what I believe. We're all just open-minded here. Okay. So discretion is always needed.
But even beyond open-minded, let's get out of our minds and drop into our inner child heart and just play in the magic, because it doesn't always have to be so serious. Like, let's just get into our heart and out of our minds. So I invite everybody just to do that, just to drop into your heart and just be like, put your kid goggles on. Let's have some fun.
So, I was doing some research on here because, when I first was thinking, I'm like, well, what should we start off with? Should we start off with, because, I have a different perception, especially, with you, because you channel, you talk to a lot of these beings. But I like the mythology around it. I like to know about a little bit more on there. Like, where did this come from? How the myth starts to come in here? What are the different beliefs? I'm really into that. So I was looking into Wiki because, Wiki's got the answers to a lot of stuff, but they were talking about, the fairies. And some of the stories had said that myths and stories about fairies do not have a single origin, but are rather a collection of folk beliefs from disparate sources. So this means that various folk theories about this origins of fairies include everything from either they've been demoted as angels or demons in Christianity tradition, or they're minor deities in pagan beliefs. Some of them even think that spirits of the dead or prehistoric precursors to humans or as elementals. One of the things that I found interesting was down here where they had said a recurring motive of legends about fairies is the need to ward off fairies using protective charms. I'm like, oh, what's this all about? Is this like, it almost felt like they were vampires. It's like, what's this?
Well, elementals and fairies have egos. They're not, they live in the same dualistic environment that we do.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, you would think that there was just as much as there's good as they're bad as, in that area than there would be with us.
And they really like to be tricksters. But I want to say something real quick because it keeps coming in. If you guys watch the show Survivor, next time, look at Jeff Probe real close. He is a descendant of the elementals. Just look at his facial structure and tell me I'm wrong.
He does look elf quality like.
Yeah, he's an elemental
with a little bit of the pointy ears, right?
You'll never look at him same.
I don't know. The prettiest elf I ever saw was still Orlando Bloom. To me, it was Legolas. So. But just a reminder, guys, if you are live joining us, make sure you say hello. Say, just let us know. Don't forget to hit that like button, guys. I know it's always hard to see, but go ahead and give us some love. That's so that more people can see it. Hi, Vicky. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Hemma.
Yeah, Hemma's on here as well. So the one thing that I thought was interesting, they said a recurring motive of legends about fairies is the need to ward fairies using protective charms. Common examples of such charms include church bells, wearing clothing inside out, four-leaf clovers, and food. Fairies were also sometimes thought to haunt specific locations and to lead travelers astray. Before the advent of modern medicine, fairies were often blamed for sicknesses, particularly tuberculosis. So is that just like the blame game here on the fairies?
Yes,
Like,
totally. There's already fairies in here. They're flying all around. So just watch, you guys. You might see the lights going by. Like they're going by super fast right now.
going super fast, right?
Super fast. Catch me, catch me.
Catch me if you can. Yeah, so that was some of the things on fairies. Now, the dragons, I don't know a lot about. So, Johanna, do you know anything? I mean, I know we've talked about spiritual dragons, but in working with them, this seems to be more about the idea of transforming. Is that correct?
What, the dragon energy?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the dragon energy, they're protectors. Like I have a dragon that's a part of my spiritual team, and it's a Christed dragon. And so it's part of the Christ conscious awakening that's happening right now. And they're just protectors and they're transmuters, and they're just amazing creatures that do live currently in other realities, and they are some of the most amazing healers that are out there. And there's different types of dragons. There's dragons from different dimensions. There's different dragon lineages. None of this I knew until I opened my mouth. So it's good stuff. But a lot of people have been seeing dragons lately, especially the Christed dragons. So they're white and gold, and they'll show up any way you want. So I am super excited that we're going to talk about this too.
Yeah. I know. Well, I like dragons because I just like that's just been like it's just one of the emblems that I love about. I mean, I'm a fantasy girl, so it doesn't come down to just Dungeons and Dragons. Like to me, I love dragons. Anything has a dragon in it, usually I'm like, there I am. My brother's the same way. Like every time we see a dragon, we're like, let's take a picture of it.
Well, like look at
and I'm talking about like icons and statues.
Like look at Avatar though. That those were dragons that they were riding. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's so cool. And then we have elementals. It's funny because there's so many different how they characterize elementals, and there's so many like from mermaids to
it's a huge variety. There's like the elf kind and the nymphs.
Yeah. Yes. And I thought Reality Sandwich did a really good job. And I do have to give them a shout out on this. That's what their name of their thing is that they basically they place it on the 4 kinds of elementals being on the, 4 forces. So think of it, guys: water, fire, earth, so it's like all of them, air. So I thought that was kind of neat how they broke them out in that aspect. But without further ado, let's get to it. We want to bring our guest on. We have a very intriguing and interesting, lovely lady. Her name is Linda Michell. Linda is an empath. She's a psychic medium. She's a fellow starseed and has had prophetic dreams about and has seen things and worked with elementals since her early childhood. But due to a near-death experience later in life, her connection to elementals had become stronger. So we are excited to have her on board just to get her perception, to hear her story and what she, sees in this. So without any additional introduction, we're going to get Linda on here. There she is.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
Thank you for doing this. I kind of threw this on Linda. We met in another group and we just had this conversation and hit it off. And I thought, you just got to come on and talk about this stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is right up my alley.
So we're excited to have you on board. Can you give us a little bit about when you started seeing this, when you started realizing that it was just more than your imagination?
Yes, I remember probably around the age 3 or 4, being in my room. And I was there a lot, by the way. But yeah, and so to me, that was like a gift because especially at night, I would see 3 angels and they would walk around my bed like they were standing sentry or post or whatever. And there was 1 female looking angel and 2 male looking angels. And they just always smiled at me and I'd wave, and they just smile and they never said anything, but I could always feel them around me. And then even when I was outside, because there's something about cooped up in a house, I have got to get out in nature at least once an hour. I cannot be cooped up. It just brings the vibe down really, really low. So I remember when I was walking to and from school, there was this one little elemental, probably the size of an inch or so. And back then, of course, I was born way back then. And there was that old show called Tom Thumb. And I was like, well, he's small, he's male, so I called him Tom, because he was about the size of my thumb. And so he was amazing, and they will do anything, all the things I could imagine doing in my head. Tom could do it, whether it was diving 30 feet into a running brook or riding the surf or flying, or, he'd run along with me and it'd be a race to get the house and stuff like that. He was just always fun, always, 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 always fun. And then as I, also then, during later on grade school and stuff like that, I always felt in touch with the angels and the elementals and stuff like that. And when I was little, people would ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be an angel. So
that is something we should all achieve for, please.
So hold on.
Exactly.
I just want to stop you for 1 second. So you actually knew from an early age that it was an angel that was seeing you, because that to me is because, there's children out there who thinks it's an imaginary friend. They don't think anything. And then maybe they'll talk to an adult and then it gets kind of misjudged, or saying that it's not real, or that's your figment of your imagination. So you're stating that did you just know it was an angel? Did you just know? Or did they tell you?
They didn't tell me I was an angel. I just saw these wee beings. And then when I would go to Sunday school or something like that, or see something or read a story, and it was an angel and they had wings, I was like, oh, it's an angel, that type thing. And so, and people, like I said, would always ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be an angel. And they're like, realistically, I want to be an angel.
Right. What part of that did you not hear?
Exactly. And so, going through elementary school and everything like that. Then when I went, I always felt connected. And we were very fortunate. We had a home in Dallas and we had 2 ranches. And so I had horses from the time I was 4 years old and stuff. That kept me, it's probably the only thing that saved my life. Childhood was, it was just, a real learning experience. I'm stronger for it, but it was a real difficult experience. So when I was out in nature and communicating, not just with my horses, but all the animals, I talked to everything. I'll talk to the vacuum cleaner. Don't you do that on me. But how many people do you know? They're going down the street and they're like, oh no, don't run out of gas. We've got to make it to the next station, right? So, that's just my natural way. And I'll be going around my busy day and I'll be talking to my higher self or my guides, and people are looking at me like, and I'm like, and they're like, who are you talking to? I said, that butterfly behind you. And I'm like, that's a little scary. I was like, why? But I always said, I would talk about it and ask my cousins and stuff if they had those experiences. And they said no. And when I was able to see things or experiences things or knew that things were fixing to happen, and I was always tell them when I was, I was like, this is what I see, this is what I hear. And they didn't understand it anymore.
So the beings, the elementals, would kind of give you future information and kind of keep you in the loop. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And and they would I would ask them things because I was going to church. My mom was non-denominational Christian and stuff like that. But, I've never read the Bible, don't be a hater. I've read parts of it, heard parts of it, stuff like that. But, I was in Sunday school when I was little, and they would talk about, I don't want to get off subject here, but I always do. And they would talk about, God created the world in 7 days. And I don't know why I knew this, but I was like, but what planet was he on? And they were like, what do you mean? I was like, well, the days are shorter on this planet and longer on that planet. So I was like, which planet was he on? So they thought I was being a smart aleck, and so I got basically kicked out of Sunday school.
Oh my gosh, really? That's so sad.
So that happened a lot. I got kicked out of church one time too. But yeah, So I was like, I just knew there was something more. It's not that was right or wrong. I just knew that there was more than was written or that I had access to
Sure.
the information. So as I got older, 13, 14 and stuff like that, and started getting more interested in, cheerleading and, things like that. Didn't particularly like School of Nature. I thought that was a better school anyway. But, so I still kept in touch and stuff like that. And I still had the visions. And then when I was in high school, we went to Acapulco one summer on vacation. And this is one of my first really, really strong things that has stayed with me for the rest of my life. We were in Acapulco. My family was very wealthy. We were staying in his attorney's condo on the beach. And so my dad was down there on business. And I met a guy from West Point down there. He was about a year or two older than me. And the guy whose father had the yacht club and stuff like that. So we went out on the yachts every day. And they were going to teach me how to swim. And the only thing I had on was a little bitty bikini, which I didn't fill out, and this look of, as they were telling me stand up. And I'm like, no, I'm going to fall. And he was, skiing alongside me. And I was like, no, I'm going to fall. He goes, lean back. And I leaned back and immediately got down. The rope came out of my hand. All the air was knocked out of my lungs. And I was spinning like this. And then the water was so dirty because it was a storm season. And I held my hand out like that and couldn't see it. So I couldn't tell where the air bubbles were going. And so I finally saw a light. And I thought, okay, I'm finally reaching the surface because I knew I was going to die. And I was like, I hope my body washes up. I don't want my parents thinking I'm in some Mexico village and spend their lifetime looking for me, thinking I'm having amnesia. And I kept swimming and swimming and swimming. All of a sudden, I just started to collapse and lose consciousness. And all of a sudden, this being, and it didn't look like a mermaid, I call it an aquatic being, shot up. And evidently, I did not see the surface. There was a city down there on the bottom of the ocean, and there were undercurrents and tows down there. He shot up. He grabbed me. And at this point, I wasn't breathing and my heart was not beating. And so my spirit was outside of my body watching the whole thing. And he was holding me and he was breathing into me. And his skin looked like that of a dolphin. It was about that color of gray. But it had a little bit of tinge of a peachy color or something. His eyes were gray with orange and stuff, and there was no white in them. His hair was the same colors as a kind of orange and gray and stuff like that. He had webbed hands and feet, no tail or anything like that. And so he was bringing me back to life. He was standing underneath me and pushing me towards the surface because he was swimming out to where they lost me. But he didn't want to show himself. So, I just kept going in and out like that. And so finally, this guy from the cadet, he reached me and put me on the boat. I'm still out of my body. And they're like doing CPR on me. And I was looking this way and I was looking down at my body. And they were saying, please don't die. Please don't die. Your parents are on the way over here in another boat. Please don't die. They can't find you dead when you get, they trusted us with your life, So I went back, and I remember waking up and stuff like that. And I was fine, And so that was just really, really neat. That was like one of the first experiences I've ever had. And he was very, very physical. It wasn't, I could feel him touching. And then what was that movie that came out? The Shape of Water or whatever it is. I can't remember. I saw it once. Anyway,
there was an aquatic being in that, huh? I never
exactly.
watched it either. But yeah,
I did. And at the end, he does the exact same thing to me that the aquatic being I ran into did to me.
Oh, really? That's
crazy. And so it freaked me out, so that was really cool. So that was one.
It's interesting that you bring that up because it just shows you that, when you see these movies like The Matrix or these movies about these beings, that shit is channeled. Like, come on. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Someone
I
had
don't
an
believe
epic
anybody has
experience
no.
and then let's make a movie about it.
I asked one time, I asked my angels, I said, does anybody ever have an original thought? Or is it just all the information we're getting and we just think it's our thoughts, And
Right.
that has gone through my mind 1,000 times over the years. I've had lots of near-death experiences and come back and stuff like that. And so like with the dragons, that was introduced to me later, but like the the elementals always worked with them. And like when we had the solar eclipse, what was it in 2017 when it came across America?
Yeah. Yeah. It was
And so, I set up sacred space, and I had 2 weeks before it got here, I was opening the portals with my crystals to make room for it on its path and stuff. And so the day of the eclipse, I made sacred space around my willow tree, and so I put my crystals out there and everything.
Ooh, that's a favorite for elementals.
It
and
was, you could see the fairies and the elementals and the dragonflies, and the dragonfly was one huge one was trying to chase, he would chase the birds out of my space. Everything wanted to come into that higher vibration. And this one dragonfly chased everybody out. But he made a definite pattern. I mean, he was very, very, he made the same tracing in the air for hours. I mean, all day. And like, so I was sitting there in my sacred space, and then here comes a dragonfly, he lands on my foot. And I'm like, hello, and like he's sitting there with his little head, and I was like, well, tell me what you have to tell me. And so he went on with his, on dialect and everything. And I was like, it's really sweet that you stopped by. Then he comes and he lands on my face, and then his wings are across my eyes. And I'm sitting there going, this is cool, And so that kind of stuff just kind of always happens. And like, even to this day, the dragonflies there is a species of fairies that look very, very much like dragonflies. Yeah. And they can shapeshift and take on any form and look like a natural insect or whatever. And when you catch them out of the eye, in the middle of your eye, all of a sudden they still have the 4 wings, but then there's this wispy little tail at the end, and then they're gone. I mean, like gone.
So we have a question from from one of our audiences. She says, I know a person who not only identifies with fairies, she actually claims she is of fairy origin. Do you think there are living people who are genetically related?
Yes, I do. And as a matter of fact, I know 2 or 3 people. They're actually elves or fairies incarnate. There's this one lady that works at the bank where, in the little town that I live in. She is obsessed with Tinkerbell. I like the sprites, but they get annoying sometimes. And yes, I can look at a person and I'm like, there's a gnome, there's an elf, there's a sprite, and there are differences and stuff like that. And you can tell the gnomes. I mean, they have the same features, and stuff like that. And you can tell.
It's not just the elementals and fairies, you guys. Like, I can look at somebody and I'm like draconian, Pleiadian, Arcturian. Like
exactly.
When you spend enough time with these beings as much as I do, it's like they're the way that they show themselves to me and their structuring, I can pick it up in people with nothing now. I'm like, you're draconian.
Well, let's talk about some of these characteristics. Like, how would you characterize certain things? I mean, like we were just talking about how like Survivor, Jeff, the host, reminded you, and he's like, he's got to have something in him. He's like, he definitely is.
I know for me, it's that jawline. You can see it in their jawline, in their ears, and the shape of their eyes. That's how those are the characteristics that I look for.
Me too. And like in different people that are down here from other planets. I mean, you're right. I mean, they have certain characteristics where they're Pleiadian or angelic or, Orions or, they just have certain characteristics. And, I don't know if they remember who they are, but a lot of them do. And this one lady I was talking about, she's got a whole thing of Tinkerbell tattooed on her back. Everything, literally. And she knows it. She knows she was a sprite. I said, you're a sprite. She goes, I know.
I need to know this. I'm from German heritage. My family and I are obsessed with gnomes because, Germany, that's what it's known for, gnomes. We're like obsessed with it. What are the characteristics of a gnome? I need to know.
I know, and like I haven't experienced as many of those as I have others.
I
But
can
like
see it in you now that you say it, because I never
yeah,
saw it before until you say that. But it's funny because when I was meditating before I got on, I felt some type of elemental energy for you, and I was meant to message you beforehand and say, do you connect to them at all? Because you have been
yeah,
being more drawn to the earth stuff, and I feel like that's
yeah,
coming for you.
yeah. Oh yeah, they
Tanya,
do actually.
talking to you, baby.
Yeah, like one night I remember going to sleep, and I mean I had already been communicating with the gnomes and stuff and leaving these spirit plates out for them, and they all like spirit plates. They like herbs and they love crystals. Anything shiny, a button, anything, they're fascinated by it, And so I had a dream. And I was like gnome size, and we were on the sled, and we were in the tunnels underneath, the earth where you can travel through the planet on the inner side, through the tunnels that go all over and everything. And so it was like exhausting. They have more energy than you could even imagine. And when I woke up, I just was like drained. And I looked in the mirror, and I had this little funny nose, this funny head, and the funny ears, and this face, and I shape shift a lot, and people see it from time to time, so I'm not even aware of when I do it. So I looked at Rick, and he goes, "You went with the gnomes last night, didn't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." How do you know? He goes, "Get a mirror." And I was like, "Oh my gosh," so yeah,
But you
definitely.
have the elongated face, Tanya, and that's known in the gnomes is the elongated face. And so
Oh, okay,
That's interesting.
and
yeah,
you have a little
And
bit
I'm
of that, like,
short
you have that little rosy
and
cheek kind of
stocky.
puffiness right here, right? Well, because see, I'm
right,
German too. And
Yeah.
I
yeah,
connect with wood nymphs. Wood nymphs are like my main characters, but you have that little puffiness too. So
Yeah.
I can
yeah.
totally see that that ascendant,
I think my entire family are gnomes.
Well, also,
A new
yeah,
rabbit hole.
I know a lot of the planets that I have, are my celestial families and stuff like that. So, a lot of them, I don't even know the names of them and stuff like that. But yeah, I totally have had, connect with everything has to be politically correct, not extraterrestrials, non-terrestrials or whatever. Those have been, I've seen them all my life and stuff like that. I remember traveling to other planets and being on board craft. When I'm out there traveling, I'm just out there traveling with my body. I'm not on a craft of any kind.
So let's do this though. Can you tell for people because people really love the fairy elemental energy. I mean, probably
Mhm.
more than the dragons. It's something that people, they like to play with. It's fun. It's imaginative. So besides like getting a fairy house or something, which is always fun to do, they
Oh
love fairy
yeah.
houses. But what are some ways that you can help people to start connecting and building that connection? Like, how would someone know how they are connecting with them? And like,
Uh-huh.
what are some ways that they can, start building that relationship?
Okay, the first thing that I find that they really like is your inner child. Remember how you would play with your dolls and they were real and would come alive at night, or there's the boogeyman under the bed, or the other entity in the closet, and you were jumping from your bed to the threshold to go to the restroom, and stuff like that. But that inner child knew, and your inner child is playful and trusting, and their innocence, and that vibration will be like a super magnet. And if you've been out of touch with your inner child, fake it till you make it, whether you look like an idiot or not, because they love that. When we are too mental or we get too tied up in the third density paradigm or something like that, it's a real downer.
It is.
They love running brooks and streams and rivers, and where it hasn't been manicured and stuff, they're always hanging out
Yes.
around that, and sacred places. And so, and talk to them, and say, I want to see you. I know that you exist, and teach me how, and they'll watch you for a while. Some may come through, automatically, and just boom, they're there, or give me a sign. And then they're very playful. And like I said, the little sprites are being on my nerves because knocking
Oh, they're
everything out of the
tricksters.
cabinet.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
like to
they
do.
knock everything.
They like to
Yeah.
play games and make you. To them, it's funny when you're panicking, looking for something that they hid.
Oh well, and then you're knocking stuff out of the cabinets or something, and then the food and everything's on the floor, and I'm like, that's not funny anymore. I'm tired of
Yeah.
cleaning up your messes.
So
And we've been hit in 2 tornadoes, and this is another thing I don't know if people realize, but we had 2 tornadoes in the last 2.5 months, and it went dead on right through our old mobile home, which we would have thought would be absolutely devastated. And I was sending text messages saying I love y'all, saying my goodbyes. And it went right through our house, and we're out here in the country. But before it got here, I saw it on radar, and I started talking to the elementals and the angels and stuff like that. And I talked to the storm itself, and I say, I know you have a job to do, and I'm not here to deter you on your path because you are a living, breathing entity and you have a mission. And I'm like, but can you take it easy on us? I was like, can we keep up our electricity? Can we keep the animals all safe, the houses and buildings and the cars, and minimal damage? And so, yeah, I mean, it picked up, one of the trees was hit by lightning next to the house, and it crushed the house. Another one, it jumped over, and then it picked up this tree and spread it into splintered it and over like a 5-acre area. And then as it passed on, I went outside, and it was still raining, and it was so hypnotic and so peaceful just going down the road on to where his next destination was.
And that's a real thing. People don't realize that, but
yeah,
I know many people that communicate with the weather because everything is energy, you guys. And so when you can talk, I don't really ever deter the weather either, but I do grid my property before hurricanes, and I do communicate with the land and the storm as well. And so, if it's meant to be, it will be. But that's a part of it. That's a part of because the ancients, one of the beings that I've been connecting to recently, that is who the ancients are. It's the ground, it's the rocks, it's the trees, it's the wind, it's the things that first inhabited this. It's not even really a planet, it's more of a frequency, but inhabited Earth. Mm-hmm. And so, it's all of that kind of ties together. But coming back to topic, when it comes to, the dragons, how much have you connected with dragons, and what do you connect to them for?
Okay, well, the guy I met, it was, I guess, 1990. It's been a while. He was all dragon. I mean, he definitely loved the dragons. He hung out with them. He had a dragon, spirit dragon, and the whole 9 yards. And so after I dated him a while, and I was like, yeah, I want to connect with, or if I don't have one, ask for one. And so he goes, well, he said, do like a ceremony, and then, go to this level, and ask to be taken to the level where, because they're fifth dynasty and above, and to the dragon council, and tell them that you would like a spirit dragon, to help you while you're down here. And so, and I had to explain a little bit by myself, and I was in the middle of a circle. And so 3 dragons stepped forward, and the others didn't. And one was a younger dragon. He was green with black wings. And then one was a black female, all black. And then there was another one. He was white, and he was tipped with gold on his wings and, his tail and stuff like that. And they all told me their names and everything like that. And they're phenomenal because I can, if I'm trying to get a hold of somebody and they're asleep, and there's something bad going on, I need to get a hold of them, and it's in the phone, I'm like, would you please go get them? They're great at protection. And they really don't like handling the lower energy. So when I get caught up in, oh my God, this is stressful, and I've got to do this, and this is wrong, and that's bad, or whatever, that's a total turn off. You've got to hold your vibration as much as possible. But they're always there anytime I've asked for them and things like that. And I have met some very, very ancient dragons. I mean, billions of years old, one in particular, and who doesn't usually share himself with other people. So I was very lucky there. They're
And
definitely.
did that ancient dragon have a message for you? Like, what was the purpose of the visit from someone that doesn't show themselves a lot?
I guess it was the fact that I was dealing with my dragons and then with my partners and his dragon. And then after I did that, and I talk all the time. I mean, too much actually. But I'll always talk to them and stuff like that. And I always would talk to my dragons or, my spirit lion or whatever it is. And then at the same time, and then I meet and a person that was here and famous, and his spirit animal was the dragon. And he came to me like a year or so ago. So anyway, he was explaining about the dragons and what he went through with his spirit dragon, which was very enlightening. And have you ever seen martial arts, like, half of it's white, half of it's black, the yin and the yang, and you see the
Chinese dragon.
white, the white tiger on the black side and the black dragon or vice versa. And he was explaining how all that really works, and that, how it was taught was the old way and stuff like that. So it was very, very interesting. And he said that he had a lot of issues. So the dragons were there because he was an elevated being and very connected to the higher realms, and had a lot of karmic lineage karma to clean up. So,
yeah,
he was taken out early.
Before you keep going, Tanya, do you want to talk about, Tanya and I talked before this episode, over the last couple of days, and her and I both believe and have had physical experiences, encounters with the opposite side of the duality game. The darker of the lower, of that realm, because again, anytime you're talking about beings that are in a plane of duality, you're going to have the good and the quote unquote bad, So do you want to talk a little bit about and ask some questions about that, Tanya?
Primarily, you already stated it's duality. So there's really nothing to point out on there. Is, whatever you see or what you do is depending on your vibrations. But there are things that, there shouldn't be fear based on it. So but there are things out there, I do believe, that are dark and that have lower vibrations, and that hang up in energies that are basically, whatever the energy is, if it's a place or if there was something there, that's where people can, if they're in that environment, they can get fed off of and things like that. And I don't really have any questions about it. It's just something that I believe in, is that I don't believe that it's all good and goody two shoes. So that's just me in that level.
You've had an experience, and I know that there's been a lot of other people that have had experience of beings that, from a distance maybe look half reptilian, half humanoid, or maybe
you're talking about Bob.
Yeah, what about Bob? And what she named him was Bob, because we did
that we called
him. What I mean?
I don't know why it came to that, but anyway, it was funny. It became this, but there was a point to Bob, because there was something going on in both of our lives at that point, that there was a correlation that he came into. So there was a point to Bob. So I do feel like beings come in, or if you see things, because the way I see things sometimes are glitches. So like something will be like a glitch to me, or I'll be like, did I just see something on there? But then I'll get a little bit, and I like to point this out to people too. If there's something that you are not sure that you see, if you do have a lot of animals with you, 9 out of 10 times they're going to see a lot more shit for you. So exactly. I pay attention to a lot with what my animals see in that level, or how they react to. So, with those things where you can see lower, I do feel that if you're connected to, and I do feel earthbound, so I do feel that level of being connected to things that are sometimes in lower vibration. It doesn't mean I'm sitting in it.
Right.
I just think that I see it a lot more versus than, someone who might not see it.
Your plan.
So I don't, I don't really have any questions in particular for Linda on that aspect. I'm sure she understands it, and she sees it in her aspect of what she sees. But I think it depends on your journey and what wants to talk to you and what you're open to. I know that I had a huge imagination as a child. So I always huge imagination as a child. So I always, I had to go back. I was lucky. I wrote everything down. When I was a kid, I wrote everything down. I had a journal. I was lucky to have that. So I can look back at that all and I can go, oh, well, you know what? None of the, well, wait a minute. Because it's so much, it's easier when someone who doesn't understand something or who's, in the level of 3D, who's not open to it, or they can only see certain things, that if they don't trust something, and I always say that with children, like, don't put it down to them not seeing something. Most of the time, they probably are seeing something that you might not be open to. But, it's, yes, do children have imaginations? They sure to hell do. But also their inner child is what runs their life when they're adults. So just remember that.
Well,
half of our issues are because of our inner child issues.
Right.
So,
and when you come into this, when you're born as a child, you're coming from your ethereal body when you're in an infinite universe where the universe only knows yes. So you come into this body that already has earth programs downloaded on it, besides your parents' karmic crap that gets downloaded through the process of your body building. And you come into this world and they're like, no, and they would tell you they reject you. Like, that's hardcore. When you think about it in the reality of how the universe works and how the human world works, like, that's a freaking wake up call. That's like when I moved from San Diego to a one stop sign town. Like, that's a big difference.
Yeah. And I do have a firm belief that, as light workers, that we do have different vibrations of what we can connect to help other people as well. So, depending on your vibration of what you see, I will be honest, I don't see all the fairies or all of that aspect. Johanna's, very sure that I will eventually, but I'm like, I don't really care not to see it or to see it. I'm okay with either. So, it's really not that big of a deal to me if someone else believes it. I'm like, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah. But I also have a huge imagination and I'm open to shit. So
yeah, me too.
It's okay. Like, I don't have judgment on it. A lot of people have that judgment of they're wacky or, oh my gosh, or I can't believe they're talking this way. Yeah. Listen, if that makes them happy and that's the freaking world they live in, who are we to judge that person?
Exactly.
So that's the way I see it.
I go on walks on a park by my house, and I would walk this back loop, and the back loop is not a path that's generally walked by other people. Like, a few people will go back there, but there's this one section, you come around this loop and there's just this, I don't know. That's like, there's just this energy between the trees. And I remember I was just always drawn to it. Now this is, I remember I'd see fairies or feel them every now and then, but this is when I started connecting to the elementals and the nymphs, and I would be drawn to this spot on the trees, and I would just sit there and I would listen to the wind go through the trees. That sound is just, it's like melts my heart, and it just opens up my heart. And I would just sit there, and I started hearing these giggles and these noises, and I started feeling like this massive opening when I would sit there. And while I would speak light language and like activations and stuff that would be different galaxies, star systems, whatever. My home language is very, very ancient. And I was sitting there one day and I just felt this huge bulge in my throat, and the most softest, most ancient light language started coming out of me.
Wow.
And it was like an activation from them. And so now whenever the weather is not 80% humidity or pouring, I will go walk this loop, and I just pass by and I can just feel them and hear them. And it's just so magical, and it opens up my heart. And so to me, anything that opens up your heart, and, yes, there's ones that are tricksters and that have fun and stuff like that. But I don't know, there's something about the magic that opens up your heart, and more than anything, this year, we need that. We need people to believe in magic and open their hearts more than the black and white of higher perspective and the duality game. You know what I mean? We want people to come into that middle and just be like, let's just believe and let's just be free. You know what I mean? And this is why I wanted to do this episode. I just wanted to bring something magical in.
Well, one thing that I've been told for years, especially by my guides, whether they're angels or my higher self or whatever, but especially the last few years, I've never voted. I just, they tell me, don't get hooked into politics or religion. They were like, it's too compartmentalized. And they were like, everything is dualistic. It's good, it's bad, it's right, it's wrong, it's white, it's black. And they said, stay objective and just observe. Don't get pulled into that energy. And I asked, my angel guides, mainly Michael, most of the time, and everything. And so, I said, hey, you're mentioned several different religions. And I was like, so this was like years ago. I said, so there's no one preferred. And he said, we are here to help all of you. And anybody that asks and is in true need of help and is sincere with sincere intentions, we're there. Right. He said, so the whole thing in this lifetime is to integrate the dark, the light, the right, the wrong, and become unified, integrated beings and help this earth go back. Because when she was originally created, she was fifth density, and now she's been degraded down into third density for millennia.
So let me ask you about this. Have you had any encounters? I can't talk apparently, with mermaids? Oh, yeah. Have you had to that? Because my daughter is so drawn to mermaids, and I'm a triple water sign, so I love anything water. But I always look at her and I'm like, she is a walking Ariel, even though she's real. I know what her real lineage is. But can you tell us anything about mermaids and water beings?
Yes, besides the aquatic being, but my daughter is a reincarnated mermaid. She is. And she knows she is. She knows she's been a dolphin, and she knows she was a mermaid. And since that time she was born, she could swim underwater and would jump off the diving board, and she couldn't break the surface. You couldn't keep her out of the water. I had to watch her like a hawk. And she was so upset she didn't have a tail. She goes, I want a unicorn.
That's so awesome.
And so I know. And so, like, yeah, and she's going to turn 49 in August. And so she goes over to Hawaii a lot. And there's these certain pods dolphins that she hooks up with. And she's so mad that she's not a mermaid and she hasn't experienced one yet, but she knows that. And, so she has like the mermaid tarots, and I send her all the, mermaid books and stuff like that and things like that. But yeah, mostly it was that one aquatic being. But I do recognize other mer people or aquatic beings that are here, and I still communicate. And like even just a couple of weeks ago, I had a dream, and the one known as Poseidon or Neptune, I don't know, the same one, or one has his ocean, the other ocean, I don't know. Anyway, I was standing on the beach, like in California, looking out at the water, and he goes, let me show you something. And he took my hand, and then we were like down underwater, and I'm like, hey, wait, I can't breathe underwater. I'm like, hey, wait, I am breathing underwater, and it was like this long thing, and he takes me out, and we come up on this island, and he said, this is for you. He said, for all your hard work, you don't think that we hear you and know what you're doing. And he said, but we're always watching. And he said, and so when I take a shower, or if I go to a lake or a river, anything, I'll always bless it and connect with it. And even if it's taking a shower, I still can feel the energies and stay connected to mermaids. There are still mermaids and other entities that were mermaids.
Well, just connecting with water, because water holds memory, and water is, it's like 70% of our being. It's a majority of our organs. Like, water holds ancient technology and information in there, or futuristic. Like, it just holds all that. So I love that you brought that in. Tanya, do you have any questions because I know I kind of took over?
No, that's fine. I do have one question regards to, we've talked about how to attract them in there or what people's beliefs are. Is there anything with talking to these beings, since you are connected to them, that you would like to debunk or, say that's not really true about them? Or
I believe everything's true. I believe that if we think it and we feel it, that it's some parallel universe, we created it. That's just my feeling. I know there's a lot of things that people believe this way and that way, or some like that's not how it is. I just allow everybody to have their own truth. If what I say resonates, then that's great. If it doesn't, then ignore it. And same with other people. I do know and believe and have been told by the non-terrestrials and by my guides that they do follow certain lineages through from one generation to the next and always have.
What does that mean? What do you mean?
Well, like non-terrestrials, ETs or whatever, the space beings. They're over here. Okay. Somebody's in the car with me. Okay. So like, I think they let me know they're here. Okay. Yeah, I see you. Okay. So I think like certain entities, whether it's, if I was like from the Pleiades and Sirius, or from the Andromeda galaxy or another galaxy that I don't even remember the name of, they keep track when I incarnate, and they take an interest, and my DNA is different from their people's. And I think it was Johanna. Do you pronounce it Johanna or Johanna?
That's actually Johanna is the original pronunciation from
Germany. That's why I always pronounce it Johanna.
I love it that you did that, because anytime someone says Johanna, I'm like, you're German.
I recognize Johanna. I mean, I was like, it's pronounced Johanna. And then, I mean, it brings back another lifetime. So anyway, and I was like, Johanna, I just don't want to, if you go by Joanna or Johanna,
no, you got it.
Then whatever you want. Okay, go. But like, I think they do follow like my spirit, my soul, and my soul family or celestial family when we incarnate. I think they do watch over us, and they are interested in our incarnations.
Yeah, sure.
Because it feeds back to them. And when you, Johanna, that I was talking to, and I told you I had webbed feet and webbed hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my DNA is definitely different. It's the rarest blood type on the planet.
So your hands are webbed?
Yeah, just barely. They don't, especially my ring finger. They're higher than they should be, but especially right there.
Oh, that's interesting.
This is
even your separation. Even her separation in her hands is different.
Oh, we just lost her.
Whoops. Well, maybe she'll come back. But this was definitely. She doesn't really have like an offer for anything or do this for business. Like, this is just something that is a part of her life, and she does these sacred ceremonies and things. Like, this is just something that, she has done. And her and I talked for quite a while about it. So I was excited that she could come on.
I'm interested to know if it was the being in her car that turned off.
They're either like, you're done. We're gonna cut you off.
Was it a fairy? Here. What was it?
Right. Well, if she comes back, we can ask her. But
yeah, she does have a page. Let me hear it. Let me get this information on here in case she comes back here. It is on Facebook. It's called Original Starseed. If you want to go ahead and follow Linda Michell on there. She just started the page out here, but if you feel guided to reach out to her, you most certainly can. It was definitely interesting. I think one of the things that I'm always interested in is hearing people's stories of how they first started seeing things. I'm always interested on that level. And like you said, I didn't really have anything aspect as to what to ask her. I was just curious of her story more than anything. What she had to say. And she pretty much, stated that to us. Oh, here she is. She's back.
Yeah, I got you back. I'm going to show you my web toes, but they're all the way webbed up. And I ended up kicking the phone.
That's okay. It's okay.
My dad had it on one foot, and I have it on both. So
we went ahead and while you were off a little bit, we did share your Facebook page so that people knew how to get a hold of you on there, so that, we know that you're just starting out in that aspect. But if people want to reach out to you, they know how to. Is there anything, because we are getting close to the tail end here, is there anything that you really want to touch upon, or, on a way that how people can connect more easily and be open to this? Because there are people who might not be, know what to do or how to think. Do you have any suggestions for them?
Yes, I do. And it still comes back to vibration. And because there are entities that feed off the fear factor, and so it's like heroin to them, and the fear factor, the sorrow, the grieving, the negative thinking is a total bummer. They will not connect with you. I mean, I have been in a bad situation where, it was critical life or death and had, angels or whoever come down and, pull me out of the situation, and stuff like that. But yeah, try to meditate and just clear your mind and do make believe. I mean, whatever it gets you to get in touch with your inner child, and please don't feed the fear. That's what I get from every entity, whether they're angels or beings that have already crossed over. It's like, no fear, no fear, no fear, because they really feed off of it, and it keeps the whole energy and vibration of the planet suppressed.
Let me give people an easy way for them to get into their heart. So here's a really easy way for you guys to get into your heart. So when you sit in meditation, I want you to take 3, 4, 5, however many you need to do, deep, deep belly breaths, and just focusing on your breath. And then once you're done with the belly breaths, I want you to just go into your heart space. And so what I always tell people is just imagine a heart and a door on it and an opening, and you walking in. And when you walk in, this place is going to be filled with the memory or the memories, right? So bring yourself to those memories that were the most joy filled, where you're like, tears are coming down, you're in joy. So one of my students, it was holding her son, right? For me, it's actually connecting with my future grandchild, that really gets my heart as open and wide as it can be. So connect to a memory or even a song that invokes that memory.
Music, tenfold does it for me.
So if it's music, however you connect to a memory the most, that's going to bring you to that tear, joy-filled moment, and just sit there in that space. And once you've been in it for a minute or two, in that moment, just say, fairies, elementals, whatever you're wanting, I'm open to visiting with you. And just know that they're kind of skittish. So, they are, and so you have to do it a few times. And I would create a little sacred space, whether it's a candle or a crystal, and just a little area that's for them, and just do it repeatedly and let them know that you're okay and that you're safe and that you're friendly. But really the key is getting into that heart energy first and just busting it wide open and then inviting them in. And eventually they will feel safe enough to come in. And if you already have a fairy guide, like there's galactic fairies, there's dualistic fairies, so or elementals, same thing. So if you already have one that's a part of your spirit team, then it won't be hard for them. They'll be there right away. But if you're calling in for the first time and wanting to investigate, like, they're skittish. So it may take a minute, but getting into that heart space, like she said, is key. But that's a really quick way for you guys to get into your heart.
Can I just one interjection? One thing that I have been doing, and I see them anyway, but for years, and I don't know if y'all have heard of this or done it, you probably have. Take your phone and video, and have it that blacked out, all the lights out, and then the light on the video, and just watch. And there are orbs and spheres just flying past in all colors, and they come they feed off the energy coming off the TV. They feed off of my altar and stuff like that. And they'll come right up in my face and stay there, and boom, they're off. And I'm there's just hundreds of them sometimes.
The fairy orbs are way bigger than a
they are
orb. They're way bigger. And so you can set up cameras and do that too. They like to show off.
They like the light. They like the light and they like to show off. You're absolutely right. And so I've even the other day, I was doing it in the daytime trying to video one of my animals, and I was able to see them then. But yeah, I love the spheres and orbs. Then there's this one huge turquoise one, it follows me, especially under a full moon. I'll go out and it'll dart in and out of the camera range, and then I'll go back in.
I caught a fairy live on camera. I don't remember if you remember that, Tanya, but I sent you the picture.
Yeah.
And I was taking a picture of the moon, and you could see the whole little tiny body perfectly. And I was like, what up? It was epic. It was the best thing I ever caught in my life.
And it followed me in the house. It followed me in the house.
Well,
and there was one. Yeah.
Tanya, it matched the same image on an oracle card that I pulled like 2 days later that was like, oh my God.
That's
and so
right.
I remember sending you the picture and the oracle card. And I'm like, look, it's
I do
almost
kind of, I do kind of remember. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
remember.
I
It
do.
kinda
I
looked like-
do.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Cool. Well, Linda, thank you so much
Yes.
for coming on. We truly appreciate it. Thanks again for enlightening us with your point of views and, letting us know. And hopefully, we will probably, let us know if there's anything on the show or if there's anything that comes up. Let us know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will. All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank
I
you.
really have had a fun time. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it was
All
so
right.
awesome.
All
All
right.
right. Take care.
Bye,
Linda.
guys.
Just so you guys know, before we hop off, because we are over our hour here, we will be on next week. We don't have a guest next week. Every month, we are just going to do one show where it's just Johanna and I.
We're just going to chat.
We're going to just chat. So next week, we are going to be talking about friendships, the types of friendships, what all friendships are about. We're excited for this episode. You guys enjoy yourselves, and we will see you guys next week. Take care.